Donald Trump might get charged with the Espionage Act. Is that because Donald Trump is secretly a spy, or is that because the Democrats secretly don't want him running in 2024? Hello there, you 5.8 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this journey of discernment. We're awakening an inner light that's already within you. We're trying to understand truth and all of its complexity. Come with me on this voyage. Subscribe now if you don't subscribe yet, and turn on that notification bell. We need you on this journey with us. Now, as you know, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, I am not a pro-Trump MAGA person. I believe we need decentralized systems, and no demagogic figure is going to emerge on the political scene to rescue us from centralized financial and state interests. However, I do think that the Democrat Party ought to be evolving their policies to be more representative of ordinary Americans of all hues, identities, persuasions, and colours, rather than simply trying to destroy the opposition by smearing them as spies. Although, if Donald Trump is a spy, God, I'd really like to see him as a spy, because I can't imagine it being subtle under literally Eddie's, I'm a spy, I'm the world's best spy, nobody spies like me, I spied on him, I spied on them, I'm the best spy you'll ever see, nobody cares more about espionage than me, I'm better than Bond, I'm better than Bourne, I'm better than all of them. Like, I don't think that he's cut out for it. It's a show-off, I mean, you can't have show-offs as a spy. I had a wonderful conversation with Kim Iverson about this espionage farrago. What are the objectives of the FBI? Can we trust the FBI? What's the history of the Espionage Act? Is it just the, I don't like you, you're Julian Assange, you're Edward Snowden, don't tell people stuff we don't want ordinary people to know because it will stop them believing in the government, big tech, big pharma, big media, big food, big agra, start making people want to break out and form their own independent communities where we have actual, meaningful, real power? I asked Kim Iverson about those matters and so much more. Here's a part of our fantastic conversation. Stay to the end because you're going to be even smarter, and I know you're smart already. By the end of this conversation, hit me up in the comments below. Let me know what you think about it. Remember to give this video a thumbs up and pass it around. What do you think, given that given what's happening with the FBI and the current investigation and the potential that Trump will be charged under the Espionage Act, which we colloquially at this channel refer to the "we don't like what you're saying" act, the Julian Assange, you're going to jail wherever you are in the world, we're putting you in prison act. What do you think about these current Trump charges? Do you think there is legitimate concern, or do you think this is ultimately an attempt to stop him running in 2024 so the Democrat Party don't have to evolve to represent people in a more obvious way?
Right. To actually represent the people, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're going to, well, it's hard to say because they've just gone after the guy for 6 years straight, maybe even longer, trying to get him, trying to somehow ensure that, well, they're trying to pin him, right? They're trying to say, well, you are for sure a Russian asset of some kind, a Putin puppet of some sort, a Manchurian candidate. And they've been trying to tie him to Russia for the longest time to no avail. I mean, there's people that dispute that and say, no, we found that there was these meetings and we found this and we found that and we found, but they really have not been able to prove that Donald Trump is against the United States, that he is a traitor to the country, operating on behalf of Russia to help Russia for whatever reason, his own financial gain, or because, I don't know, he's somehow loyal to Russia in some way, shape, or form. I don't exactly know where they're thinking, what line of reasoning they think Donald Trump would have to be such a person, but that is certainly where they've been headed for the last 6 years. And so with the Espionage Act and investigating him under the Espionage Act, the Espionage Act, as you mentioned, is an act that has been used since the beginning of the time that it was formed. It was formed around World War I. It's been around for a little over 100 years now. And when it was formed, it was because back then, right before World War I, they didn't really have any way, they didn't have a law really on the books that prevented people, particularly foreign nationals living in the United States, from sharing state secrets or any sort of information with foreign, what would be enemy governments. They didn't really have anything on the books like that. They had treason, and being a traitor to the country, you needed to be an American. The Espionage Act was designed to be a bit broader, to say if you're against the war effort or if you're against the national defense of the country, you could be charged under the Espionage Act. And because they wrote it so broad, in the beginning, there was all of this debate actually around the Espionage Act about the First Amendment and the First Amendment rights of people. They wanted to be able to go after people who were just anti-war activists. And even though there was plenty of debate around that, unfortunately, the Espionage Act has been used quite successfully in many occasions against people who were just outspoken against the war. I mean, there were people, they would go after anarchists, they would go after socialists, they went after anyone who was just an anti-war activist. There wasn't a lot of support for World War I, and a lot of these people, a lot of people just weren't really cool with the draft. They questioned the motivations of the government, and anyone who did that was at risk of being charged with the Espionage Act. In fact, there was one gentleman who made a movie. His movie was about the Revolutionary War. Okay, it wasn't even about World War I. It was about the Revolutionary War, and in fact, it was a silent film. There were no words, but because it depicted the Revolutionary War, which was the British against against Americans, and there was fighting and shots fired by British over to Americans in this silent film. And at that time in World War I, the Brits were allies. They deemed this like speech against the war, and they actually threw the guy in jail, a filmmaker who made a silent film. They threw him in jail for that movie that had nothing to do with World War I. So the Espionage Act has been used over time, just against political dissidents. And then, of course, it morphed, and they went really after people that they thought were communists and in bed with Russia. And then it really didn't get much use for a while. It kind of remained silent for a while. And then it sort of picked up during the Bush and Obama years, where, previously, prior to the Obama administration, there were like three people ever that were in media journalism that were targeted with the Espionage Act. And then under the Obama administration, I think that rose up to like 19. Some of them started under the Bush administration, to be fair. But yeah, it's an act that is not used. Now they do use it. So it's not just targeting whistleblowers and journalists and political dissidents and anti-war activists and socialists. And, interestingly enough, mostly targeting people coming from the left. And now the left is championing it now that it's going to be used against potentially Donald Trump. But it's also been used against CIA and federal agents who have possessed or leaked classified information to the press, or used it for their books or something along those lines. So they have now in those cases don't get much press, but it is used against people who mishandle classified information, but not typically. Typically, if a person mishandles classified information, which happens all the time in the government, they just get a slap on the wrist. They get maybe their privileges, their classified, top secret privileges revoked or something, but they don't go to jail. They don't get charged with the Espionage Act. And the fact that Democrats, not just Democrats, it's actually the establishment, I would say, coming from both sides, because Trump is hated by the establishment, the anti-populist establishment on both sides. They're coming after him. And they're using now to go after him in Mar-a-Lago, to search his home, to raid the home of a former US president. They're using the Espionage Act, knowing that the average person doesn't really understand that it's been used historically in this very nefarious way to go after just political dissidents and people criticizing the government. And so they just, the average person sees a headline and sees Espionage Act, that's spying. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. This must be very bad. Donald Trump, they finally got him for being the Putin puppet we always knew he was. I mean, that's how people think, and how they're busy. They don't have time to dig deeper to understand these what's really going on. And so, Trump being investigated under the Espionage Act, Hillary Clinton was investigated for the same sort of thing with the emails. When it came down to her emails, that would have fallen under the same act. And yet, with Trump, I think there's a much higher chance that he actually does get charged under the Espionage Act. It's pretty flimsy. And the thing is, the government doesn't have to disclose to us what it is because it's classified. So suddenly, we can hear about it in the news, we can read about it, but we can't really know exactly what the documents were. Was it just a handwritten note on a napkin that he shared with the French president at dinner? We don't know the level of what this document is that they declared to be top secret or confidential. We don't know. And we can't know because it is secret, confidential, or top secret. So it's, but the chances of Trump being actually charged, I mean, I would think they would have charged him by now if they really truly had something. I think there's a lot of questions though around this. They knew he had these documents. He hasn't been president for a year and a half. They've known he's been in possession of these documents. We have to remember the guy is surrounded by Secret Service still. Um, so they would have known that he would have had these. In fact, they say that the leaker that it worked on behalf of the FBI was a Secret Service agent. So people are around him all the time. Why would it take them a year and a half to go and collect documents this sensitive? And okay, maybe then we could say, well, they just found out about these particular documents. Well, again, why did they, they applied for the warrant and they still took 2 days to go into his house. If it was really truly that sensitive, wouldn't they have done it right away? But they got the warrant on a Friday. They waited till a Monday. I mean, the FBI works on Saturdays and Sundays. I can guarantee you that. So why did they wait? I mean, there's just this concerted effort to take the guy down. And I think that, obviously it's backfiring. People are then rallying around him. People that don't even like him, that have hated him, say, wow, there must be something this guy's really doing to upset the establishment if they're going this hard after him. And now they're even, nonstop. And now they're trying to use the Espionage Act against the guy, claiming that the former US president of the United States is somehow a spy for a foreign country. I mean, that's serious.
Do you suppose then that it's, given that you have, if not dismissed, then certainly questioned the more legitimate motives that would underwrite that action, do you think it's simply that Trump is regarded as a problem that has to be solved in terms of 2024, or indeed the idea that there is a viable alternative to establishment rule? Just for transparency, in case you don't know, I'm not a person that's sort of at all pro-Trump. I feel that the systemic problems in American and indeed global government are so deep that there's a requirement for a massive overhaul. And what interests me is the advancing of the agenda of decentralized power, localized power, where ordinary people have as much democratic, financial, emotional and spiritual control over their own lives and the lives of their family and community, consensually and democratically as possible. I don't think that there's any demagogic kind of figure that's going to emerge to solve those problems. I think it's a problem that we have to solve collectively. But it seems that Trump is, do you think that it's simply to sort of nullify the threat of Trump and the idea of Trump and what Trump represents, i.e. a sort of a populist anti-establishment figure that's providing, even if only rhetorically, an alternative to the neoliberalist establishment?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Trump is not the guy that's going to really make significant change in taking this all down. He's not the savior of freeing us from the global, establishment that is rising up. But certainly his rhetoric, and certainly he is opening the eyes of people and waking people up in a way. I mean, even when he first started and talked about fake news, when I first heard that coming out of him, I was like, oh my gosh, fake news. But him saying it over and over, suddenly now, I think many of us agree the news is very fake, right? I mean, we've woken up to that.
Yeah.
So I think Trump, they absolutely are doing everything they can to prevent him from running in 2024, to eliminate that threat. Now, the Espionage Act itself, if he does get, let's say, charged and even convicted of the Espionage Act, that does not actually prevent him from running for office. But one of the other, on the warrant, there were three different investigations that or three reasons for them to go in. And one of them was a different act that actually would prevent him, if convicted, would prevent him from running for federal office. So that's really interesting. And that one would be much easier for them to get him for. So I think the Espionage Act one is just to kind of get the public to turn on him. They're still trying to get everybody to turn away from his rhetoric. They don't like the things he's saying. So if the man's a traitor, how dare you even prop him up at all? But the other act that they're investigating him for, according to the warrant, is one that has to do with the destruction. It's the withholding or theft or destruction of federal property, of federal documents. And if you are charged and convicted of that, you cannot run for federal office. So, and that one, they probably would be way more likely to get him for. So one is for like optics and one is to prevent him from running for office.
Well, what did you think about that conversation? Don't you feel a bit smarter now? Don't you feel a bit better informed? Don't you now understand where the Espionage Act came from? Don't you now understand which particular facets of those charges could prevent Trump from running in 2024? Doesn't it make you query even more why there isn't a political party or political movement that truly represents ordinary Americans, that's interested in people having as much power and control in their own lives? Freedom to pursue happiness and joy, all the stuff that's in your constitution over there. Well, let me know if you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want to see more like it. Let me know in those comments what guests you want to see. Do you think, let me ask you fundamentally and outright, do you think Donald Trump is a spy, or do you think this is an attempt to prevent him running in 2024? Let me know in those comments below. Give us a thumbs up, share it around. Turn on the notification bell, because the algorithm, why, it could be part of some conspiracy, couldn't it, to prevent us getting viewed. We make videos every day and we want you to watch every single last one of them. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either one of these and sign up to our mailing list right now so I can tell you about live and online events we're doing, and so we can get a bit deeper into this thing. More important than any of that is that you please stay free.